Once you become a parent here, I feel like it ties you so much closer to what the community's trying to accomplish and to like build something better for them.
I want Portsmouth to be a place of, when they think back of how they grew up, where they grew up, somewhere that they have very positive memories. I want it to be a place that created opportunities for them. They, you know, my children are biracial, and I had a positive experience growing up, you know, as a black girl in Portsmouth. I don't know that was everyone's experience who, you know, as a person of color, but I certainly want my kids, you know, to grow up with positive memories and things like the Portsmouth Unity Project, like trying to lean into things like that or things I'm passionate about.
Right. You know, I want Olive and Sonny to like look at these conversations, look back at these things with people like yourself and realize that where they're from or like where they grew up, none of that is a limitation for their potential.
Yeah.
New Local Legends Podcast. Real small town success stories.
You have quite the lineups.
We believe that if people know better, they can do better.
When you kissed me by the river.
Sponsored by Glockner Enterprises.
As pies are made at Glockner Chevrolet.
Time to turn.
Rich Moon.
Welcome to the Speakeasy.
The amount of love and compassion.
The hope that's been bubbling up in the last few years.
The finer things about Portsmouth.
You just don't see that everywhere.
Local legends only.
Welcome back to the Local Legends Podcast. This is episode 52, and I'm in the Glockner Speakeasy with Tia King. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Just to preface, Tia, as you know, like half the population of the people employed in our city work in a healthcare field, whether it be SOMC or some other entity. And as a healthcare professional yourself, who's tending to patients every day, active member of the community, I'm excited to invite you to the table for the broader conversation that we're having about our city here in the Speakeasy. So just maybe start by introducing yourself, who you are, your profession.
All right. I'm Tia King, born and raised here in Portsmouth, Ohio. I am a proud graduate of Portsmouth High School, go Trojans. Graduated in 98, and then at that point I left and went to The Ohio State University, where I obtained my bachelor and master's degrees. I obtained my bachelor's in nursing and then went straight through and obtained my master's in science, which then allowed me to be prepared for my Family Nurse Practitioner certificate. So that all happened between 98 and 2004. Worked for Mount Carmel West for a couple years, then went into an internal medicine practice for a year and a half there in Columbus. And then my husband, Dale King, he was active duty in the Army and was assigned in Colorado Springs, Fort Carson. So we moved out there for 2 years, and I worked for Evans Army Medical Hospital for about a year and a half before we moved back here to Portsmouth.
Wow. Yeah. I didn't know about your experience while Dale was stationed.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What do you learn from that experience?
It was a very unique experience, something that I took a lot of pride in. I was able to, provide healthcare for our active duty, men and women who were serving in the Army, as well as care for their families. So that gave me a lot of pride. I felt like I was making a difference, with the specific population of patients that I was caring for at that time.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful to you. Maybe walk us through, where you grew up, went to school, what led you to your career. I know you preface to those things, but get a little bit more into your early days in Portsmouth here.
Oh, goodness. So like I said, born and raised, I had a great time growing up here in Portsmouth. I feel like I have a lot of positive memories growing up here. You and I had briefly spoken before we got started today, if I still remain in contact with people that I grew up with, and absolutely I do. Those are friendships that I'm going to have absolutely for the rest of my life. So I have several of my very best friends are people that grew up here with me, that we went to school together, got into a lot of shenanigans together. And one of my best friends, she's also a nurse as well. So we kind of followed each other down the same career paths. But I have nothing but positive memories from growing up here. As far as what made me get into my specific career, I had always imagined I was going to be a pediatrician. I thought that until I was probably, a senior in high school. And I actually worked as a nurse's aide at the Old Mercy, what was then the emergency department. And I got to job shadow. I had heard a little bit about the profession of nurse practitioner, physician's assistant, and I actually got to job shadow, or at least see what some of the nurse practitioners were doing in our emergency departments. And I was just very intrigued by that. I was drawn towards that. And one of the nurse practitioners who I saw a lot of, her name is Jeannie Cherry Holmes. She was an NP at the time, and I just was fascinated by her. And I still work side by side her now. She is still in our emergency department. I have so much respect for her and just how she practices and what she does for our profession. So I would say she has a very heavy hand in why I decided to become a nurse practitioner.
Of course, yeah. And I'd love to get more into the profession, but growing up, did you picture yourself settling down here after school, starting a family, rooting yourself in the community?
Never. And that's not to throw shade on Portsmouth, but I just assumed, I had gone to college in Columbus. I lived in Columbus for 7 years. And so I always thought that I would either stay there, or once Dale and I had moved to Colorado, we initially thought we were going to stay out there. We bought a home out there.
Wow.
And just thought that that's where our lives would settle. And then once you are there and you find out you have no family by you, if you're going to have kids, what does that look like? We just realized maybe we don't want to be this far away from home. So we thought we would, come back to Ohio, but for whatever reason, I assumed it would be Cincinnati, because I felt like I had seen and done Columbus. And then Dale gets a job offer out at the plant, and here we are.
Wow.
Yeah, he comes home and is like, so what do you think if we move back to Portsmouth? And I was like, what?
Well, the landscape was certainly different then, right?
It definitely was very different at that time. Very different. I have no regrets about coming back, especially now looking at the trajectory of what's taking place in our city. I'm so excited to have maybe a little part in that. So at least try to contribute to that and keep that momentum going.
Of course, yeah. And my dad reminds me, because him growing up here, my family being from here, that there was a point in Portsmouth history where people were being encouraged to move away.
Oh,
yeah. And that was the vibe that. That's what his dad told him. That's what, was just not the same landscape, not the same opportunity. And, there was certainly in more of a decline than an incline as we're on now.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely, and I still hear people say, I want to leave Portsmouth. There's nothing here. I will say, I think it's a good idea if you have grown up here, if you ever think about leaving, it's good to go out and explore, just because I don't think it's ever a good idea to kind of stay stagnant. Get out and explore, see what there is in the world, but there's no reason you can't come back and help grow our community.
Well, yeah, the question is Portsmouth a viable place to grow and make friends and start a family and raise your family? Absolutely.
Yes,
there's
absolutely
all kinds of different solutions, but that wasn't the narrative, obviously, for the longest time.
Yes.
let's get into your profession. You guys have had some unique challenges over the last few years, Tia, and I wanted to get your perspective on that because I think it's valuable, especially in our local context. So, 2020 was undoubtedly a test for healthcare professionals that was unrivaled in many ways.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about your own experience through the pandemic and what it's looked like up to now? What's important for the general public to understand about the last couple of years?
So I work at SOMC in the emergency department. I've been there. We came back here in 2007. I started at the urgent cares and stayed there for about 3 years and then transitioned over to the emergency department. So I've seen just a lot of changes in general happen, but specifically with the pandemic, the emergency department were frontline. So if many times someone who had COVID or thought they had COVID and they were very ill, or even if they weren't very ill, we were often the first people that they sought, for medical attention. And of course, you would see anything from very mild cases all the way up to this patient needs intubated. They're going to the ICU. Are they even going to come off of the vent? So you see the whole array, of how COVID affected patients as far as within the emergency department. It put a lot of stress and strain, on us as staff. At that time, no visitors were allowed in the hospital. And that was across, the country. That was just for safety precautions. And so that put a different spin on, what we needed to do for our patients. We not only cared for them medically, but we had a heavier hand in their mental health and trying to keep them from being lonely. We played a lot of times, the communication line between them and their family, especially if they were in a state where they couldn't speak. Family couldn't be there at the bedside. So you're doing, FaceTime if you can, so they can see their loved one. So it's very stressful. For, obviously patients and their families, but that was a new difference on our end, not being able to have family, at the bedside with their loved one when they're going through such a scary moment, in their life. So that was something that was definitely very different. Our staffing changed a lot because of what was going on with the pandemic. Certain portions of the hospital were closed. Things that weren't of necessity were closed. Again, just trying to keep people at home. So that did, decrease our overall patient volume. So therefore they had to adjust on, staffing side. You can't really keep as many people working, if they're not seeing as many patients. But that does put more of a stressor on the people that are left behind, to care for everyone, because in the emergency department, let us not forget, you don't know what's coming through the door at any given time.
Right. Right. Everything else didn't just stop because of the pandemic.
Exactly. So, exactly. And one thing that I can understand why people do it, but it always gives me a little chuckle. I'll hear the unit clerks answering the phone and they'll say, I can't tell you what our wait time is right now. People like to call ahead and say, are you guys busy? How long of a wait is it going to be? And so it's just like, I could tell you one thing right now in literally 90 seconds. There could be a 5-car pileup. We have a lot of people coming through the door. So, So, yeah.
Well, Tia, obviously, no one planned that. It was almost impossible to be prepared for what you all were facing. So, what do you think you learned reacting to that situation real time? What did you learn professionally as a person, having to adapt so quickly to this new phenomenon that we're still dealing with now?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways I have, and I think it's a common takeaway from the pandemic, is just self-care. I never really looked at, okay, I need to be taking care of myself, mentally, because it's a heavy burden, to take care of people.
Oh, sure.
Daily. And then, so many people, being out of work or not being able, to go into work, not being able to go into school, see their friends, that can take a major toll. And then you're dealing with this virus that you don't know if you're going to get it, if your loved ones are going to get it. If you do, how sick are you going to become from it? So just really looking at what are the things that I value. I think it made me look at, there's more to life than just work. Really trying to enjoy yourself outside of work, because when you're at work, the mental strain that it has, I had looked at a statistic that said that the number of times that a healthcare provider, and this specifically looked at doctors, nurse practitioners, physicians, assistants, the number of times that you're interrupted in a 1-minute interval while you're at work, it was over 30 times you can be interrupted because you're being called, X-ray wants you, CAT scan wants you, look at this lab, can you sign this EKG? So-and-so needs your help. And so trying to, and all the while, you're trying to keep in mind very important things about the patient that's in front of you, this new patient that's rolled in the door that could be a stroke. It's a lot to balance in every day that you're at work. And I don't mean this to sound, dark, but you get a little piece of yourself taken away because you're responsible and caring for so many other individuals, while you're at work. So really just trying to be more in balance with self-care is something that I took away from the pandemic.
Of course. I love that. And I obviously like being because of Shawnee State's nursing program and how many amazing nursing students come out of there. Just to dig into that a little deeper, what kind of advice would you give them regarding self-care? You know what I mean? How did you implement that to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously it doesn't hurt that my husband owns a gym. And so, that's a little easier access for me. I don't have to pay a membership, to go to the gym, but just trying to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. You're eating well, you are working out, and that can be a variety of things. You don't have to come and do CrossFit. Right. I mean, walking, meditation is huge, just kind of trying to get out of your own headspace, is a good thing. Yoga, being with friends, which again was very hard, especially early on in the pandemic when you really couldn't or shouldn't have been around one another, but just really trying to enjoy time with my friends and my family.
Of course. Yeah. And then what you're saying, that mind-body connection as well is super important to our mental health. When we're facing this new virus that has, big implications for people with pre-existing conditions. Yes. That was a big wake-up call for me, too, just to be sleeping, drinking water, basic fundamental stuff.
Yes, things that we all know that we just have to make ourselves do.
Well, right, and we take for granted when things are good. You know what I mean? But,
absolutely.
Very good. That's great advice to you. Maybe, are there specific values or principles that you feel have helped you be more successful in your career? What's worked for Tia King?
I think one of the main things that I try to base how I practice is in kindness. I always want to remember, be kind to everyone. I try to have empathy, compassion for other individuals. And I think if you can lead with those things, especially if you're in the line of healthcare, those values are never going to steer you wrong. They're always going to serve you well. So those are things that I really try to lean on as I practice.
Wow. Yeah. And there's certainly something to be said, even people in any industry, there's people in corporate environments that build a career off of being an ass. You know what I mean?
Right.
It is a strategy that you can use, but like you're saying that I think you're just obviously making so much more of an impact when you're treating other people like humans.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, there's the saying, nurses eat their young. So, it can be sometimes, and I think it's done out of frustration when you start lashing out at people. Some people just are, assholes, but but I think it can come from frustration. So just trying to take a step back, and always remember, try to lead with kindness.
Sure. That's awesome. Can you say anything else about how your career path has contributed to your perspective as a citizen here? Because, or try to talk a lot about, Tia, just the need for better generalists, people that are that excel in their profession or a specific skill set, but then use those things and cross domains like are not so stuck in their own lane, but they're like, as a designer, there's a quote from Massimo Vanelli where he says, if you can design one thing, you can design anything. So just being a general problem solver that like can work together with other people from other industries or other parts of the community for the common good, like solve problems that maybe only like Tia nurse practitioner can solve, even if it's not in the hospital. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So how do you think your profession has like tooled you up to make a difference in the community and the people around you?
Yeah, I mean, I do take a lot of pride in the fact that I get the privilege of caring for people in our community. Our community is such a small, group of folks, and the thing I like about that is I usually at least take care of one person a day that I know, somehow.
Yeah.
Whether it's I know one of their family members, or they were my teacher, or it's someone I know from school, So that's kind of neat, and I think that will check you really quickly, because it's very easy to disconnect yourself from patients. But if you are taking care of someone that or their family, I think it actually makes me better, because I want to do well, for that person. Not that I don't want to do well for all of my patients, but it is interesting when you see someone that or you connect on, a commonality.
Sure. And I think that's a powerful thing to lean into. That's kind of like the power of local, is that people, like in bigger cities, it just becomes more transactional, everything you do.
Yes.
But like you're saying, when you know the person,
yes,
it's like, and a lot of people
yeah.
once you live here for a while, because everybody's in the same rhythms.
Absolutely.
That's a powerful thing, and something we can boast about working together locally. Is like, we should have the highest quality out of quality of interactions, quality of product versus what bigger cities offer. That's kind of the charm of it.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with that.
So let's talk about with all the people you're meeting in the community. You grew up here, and obviously care about the people that live here and your own children growing up here, as I do. So you've been involved in many community projects, initiatives, community or committees outside of this or in the city. Tell us about those. What you're excited about working with right now.
Yeah, so I am on the board for the Southern Ohio Museum, as well as for Friends of Portsmouth and the Counseling Center. And then I've also had a hand in helping create the Portsmouth Unity Project. So those are things that I'm pretty, passionate about. As far as with the museum, I'm on one of the things I like to do and I'm usually involved with for them is the party planning committee. I like a good party. So
it's important. It's important.
Yeah. And so, I am not an artistic person, but I do like the fact that I can be involved with that organization. I certainly have learned more about art, specifically local artists, and just the different, events that the museum puts on, the draw that they try to bring to our area. Mark and Charlotte Gordon, I think they do an amazing job, with that. Sure. And I love the fact that they are very engaged in our area. Charlotte's on city council now. So I'm really proud to kind of help them, grow the museum in any way that I can.
Yeah. Charlotte's a great example of a person too, that like is taking her like niche experience in the arts and business and then applying it. Like that's a huge resource for a city councilor, making projects like Portsmouth street art like a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And she's actually had a hand in helping with the Portsmouth Unity Project. So that organization, after the spring summer of 2020, you had what happened with Tiana Taylor, and then also with George Floyd and many others. We kind of had our own civil rights moment in time, and so because of that, there were a group of us who we just felt called to do something, for our area. Yeah. And so Gerald Cadogan, April Deacon, who's the art teacher at Portsmouth High School, and then also Drew Fight, professor down at Shawnee State. And then there were several other people who decided we're going to create an organization. We weren't sure what that was going to look like or what it was going to entail, but we have since started branching out. And the main thing we do, we create educational experiences, art pieces that depict diversity and unity within our community. And so because of that, we've had several different art installations placed at different businesses throughout the community. Earth Candy has one. We try to center it around activities that we can do together here. So Earth Candy is grow together here. There's going to be a new mural going up at River City Adventures that Nick Stahl, he's a Columbus-based artist, is going to be working on that is going to be based around adventure together here. And we try to incorporate faces, of all races, ethnicities, to show that, we're all here together. We need to live together. We can certainly play together. We have a lot more in common than we do as far as being different from one another.
For sure.
So just trying to really hone into that. And Charlotte's actually helped with us getting a grant. She helped at least guide us in the right direction to get a grant from the Ohio Arts Council to help support that project.
Wow.
So that's been fun. And then of course the counseling center. Sadly, but like many other places, we have a huge, problem with, substance abuse and dependence in our area. But the counseling center is doing great things to help combat that. They're actually a leader, in that field. So I'm happy to be involved with them as well.
That's cool, Tia, that you're on all these different boards that are really like healing the city in different ways, and that's exciting. Having Drew Carter on the podcast was insightful with his involvement with 14th Street Community Center. Like he had commented that, Portsmouth in a lot of ways, although we've made progress, we're still very like culturally segregated.
Sure. Yes.
And so I think the Unity Project is an important part of like trying to break down those barriers, show people the strength and diversity, and just honestly, it's a lot of like people are in their own rhythm. They do their own things, what they're comfortable with, but how can we, better provide, like you're saying, the murals or like third party, maybe it's a party or block, like the Portsmouth block party, things like that help people like intermingle and start to like get comfortable with kind of breaking their own barriers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. You have to start somewhere. And if we can start a conversation, show a different way, show a new path, I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Well, yeah, I guess maybe that leads into the next question here. I mean, what are you excited about that's happening in the community? Anything specific? I mean, there's so much momentum going on right now, but I guess what are you gleaning from the conversations you're having at these different communities?
Yeah, I mean, Friends of Portsmouth is just doing so many things, and I'm honored to be a part of their board. When you have minds like Tim Wolf and Sarah Graff and, Jeremy Burnside, I mean, they just have awesome ideas. Some of them, especially with Tim, he'll say something, you're like, wait a minute, you want to do what? Like, but he finds a way to make it happen. And that's just so inspiring, because I think a lot of times people can become complacent, especially as we get older, and a lot of times the answer is no, we can't do that. Like, I don't see how that's going to happen. And Tim is always like, oh yeah, we can make that happen. That's not going to be a problem. So that's very inspiring. And I hope that I learn from him to lead more with, yes, that can happen, as opposed to this is why it can't happen. Be a part of the solution,
Yeah, well, that yes, that you can happen is exactly why, Friends of Portsmouth happened. Portsmouth Skate Parks has its grand opening on April 9th, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Just the variety of like initiatives that are happening now is really interesting, because initially it was like, I guess we just have more variety than we've ever had before. Even the Children's Museum, I feel like what's happening there is just it's the beginning of the positive impact that building has. I don't even think we've like begin to yet see like how that changes the culture here.
Yeah,
you know,
I absolutely.
It's more than just like a water table.
Yes, I mean, there's just like you said, there's going to be so much that's going to come out of that we don't even know. You know, it's going to have such a huge impact on our area, and I think it's the start of many things still to come.
Well, let me ask you this, Tia. Out of the projects that you're currently involved with, you know, I guess a lot of our mentors often are like our friends. It's not like a traditional mentor or like someone that you're apprenticing with necessarily around here. It's like the people you're around just start to affect you. So like, what are you gleaning from anyone specific that you're gleaning knowledge from or learning from on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, I would say professionally, I work side by side some of the best people, you know, our doctors in the ER, other nurse practitioners, other nurses. They encourage me and they inspire me every day. They are some of the smartest people, you know, that I've ever worked with. So I respect them so much. And I literally learn something every day that I go to work. And that's one thing I think I never really thought about. You know, when I was in school and even starting out as a nurse, you hear it's a lifetime learning career, but until you see that in action, and of course, you know, technology science changes daily. Like what people are learning in nursing school right now is already out of date because those textbooks were printed, you know, 2 years ago, you know, even a year ago. You're already behind, you know, the times there. But I would say, you know, like I said, the doctors, nurse practitioners, and other nurses that I work with, I respect them so much and they inspire me. On a community level, there are so many good people here in our community. Maxie Malone comes to mind. She's someone who has truly stood the test of time. I mean, she's walked the walk and talked the talk for decades now. And it's not glamorous really ever. And she does it, you know, and the work that she does, especially with the kids in our community, it really inspires me and makes me want to, you know, have longevity and trying to create a positive impact, you know, on our community. So she's someone that I think about, you know, quite a bit.
And just to, I guess you're bringing up the kids, and so it's got me thinking. Aubrey, like, she posted a quote from somebody the other day that was like, if mothers from opposite nations would like have the chance to talk with each other, it was I'm paraphrasing, but something along the lines that if they had the chance to talk to each other, I could guarantee there'd be no more war.
Yeah,
you know?
I saw that. Yeah, I was like, amen, amen.
What I'm bringing up around that point is like, you know, as parents as our children, like once you become a parent here, I feel like it ties you so much closer to what the community's trying to accomplish and have so much more of a desire to like build something better for them. You know what I mean? So much more purposed to know that you're building something that's going to affect them and then the generations after them. And so I guess, what do you want for your kids here, Tia? Like when you think of what the future's like? Yeah,
I want Portsmouth to be a place of, when they think back of how they grew up, where they grew up, somewhere that they have very positive memories. I want it to be a place that created opportunities for them. I don't want them to ever feel like they grew up in a place that there were no options or opportunities or fun things to do. They weren't able to create, you know, good memories. And I want it to be a place where they, you know, my children are biracial, and I had a positive experience growing up, you know, as a Black girl in Portsmouth. I don't know that was everyone's experience who, you know, as a person of color, but I certainly want my kids, you know, to grow up with positive memories and as far as especially around their race, their ethnicity. I don't want them to feel that they were excluded in any way. So that's really important, you know, to me as well. So things like the Portsmouth Unity Project, like trying to lean into things like that or things I'm passionate about.
Right. And it's so cool how like the initiatives that you're a part of are directly affecting those outcomes for them, and I think that's what you got to lean into, like whatever's most purpose for you. For like I think about Olive and Sunny as well, and like the coolest part of even just doing this project and getting to speak with people in the community is like when you have so many people from so many different disciplines like sitting down at the same table and sharing ideas, you kind of realize like the fluidity of all of it, like that it's more that we're not in all of these separate worlds, but that we have these very for the most part similar common goals, and it can get certainly way more accomplished when we are talking to each other at the very least. And so, I want Olive and Sunny like look at conversations back, or look at these conversations, look back at these things with people like yourself, and realize that they can, whatever degree they get, like where they're from, that they could be anything that they want to be.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That none of like where they're from, or like where they grew up, none of that is a limitation for their potential, and that it only has positive connotations. They can use all of these aspects of, what they learned growing up and their experience to like supercharge, their aspirations.
Anything's possible. I want my kids to know that anything is possible.
Well, and I think Portsmouth is like the people here are proving that.
Yes.
Proving that. And so it's just about like documenting it, getting on record for other people to hear, and perpetuating that idea that that none of this is a limitation, and we have more opportunity than we've ever had.
Yes.
And it's just you really just it's opening your mind to that possibility.
Just because we're from little Portsmouth doesn't mean we can't have a great impact globally and locally, obviously. But of
course.
Yeah.
Well, they're very interconnected.
Yes.
You know what I mean? When you have these like strong small towns that care about what they're doing and pushing out quality product and quality culture, quality art, that has like a major ripple effect.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, let's end on that. For the aspiring nursing student, people that are a part of the program down at Shawnee State, I guess, what do you want them to know about like just what you've learned from your experience? I'm thinking of specifically like those people that are listening right now that are going to enter your profession. It's obviously pretty multifaceted. You're I guess having to learn on the fly real time, get 30 interruptions a minute, and I believe that, But how do you not just survive being a nurse but thrive, Tia? What do you think?
One of the things, especially right now, if you're looking into anything that's going on in healthcare right now, one of the things that the pandemic did is it highlighted cracks that are within our healthcare system. Those cracks were already there. It widened them, made them worse. Burnout was very high prior to the pandemic. There's a statistics from like 2016 from the Bureau of Labor that said at that time the highest work-related injury amongst nurses was overexhaustion. Wow. Over 45% of work-related injuries was overexhaustion amongst nurses. So that's statistic was there in 2016. I can't imagine what that is, now that we're in 2022, 2 years post-pandemic. So because of that, and so many nurses sadly have left the bedside, and understandably so, there's a lot of times people say, you don't want to go into nursing. You don't want to do that. It's bad now. It's only going to get worse. I say two things. This is still very much a very honorable profession. It is a rewarding profession, but we do have things we need to take care of. And I hope that on my end, I can be part of the solution so that these nurses that are coming up and in years to come aren't faced with a lot of the challenges that were there well before the pandemic that we're still dealing with, that we really probably shouldn't still be having to deal with.
Right.
So I want to encourage them, and I hope that I can help to make this leave it better than the way I found it.
Sure.
So,
Right. Which, like, how would you personally, Tia, is there anything that you'd like to see or just, I know this is like kind of an expansive topic, but like, how would you like to see local healthcare change, local healthcare professionals change, that, and evolve here locally?
Yeah, and I think, and it's even, yes, locally, but it's a national issue in that we don't do enough to retain our nurses. The average age of an RN at this time is well north of 50. And so the rate in which we're going to be losing our seasoned nurses within the next 5 to 10 years is going to go down drastically. And that's life. They're baby boomers. It's going to be time for them to go. But because of that, you don't have, well-seasoned nurses that are training up these new nurses. So trying to do more in retaining the nurses that we have to keep them at the bedside, whether that be, retention bonuses. It's easy. Most places offer a sign-on bonus for you to come, but what are you doing to keep the nurses that you have?
Right.
Because the negative impact that can have, if you don't have high quality nurses working in your hospitals, that is going to be a great detriment, to the patients that present there. So if we're not taking care of our nurses, who's going to be there to take care of the patients? So just one of the things I think we really need to lean more into is working to try to retain the nurses that we have. And I think a lot of that's going to mean a salary increase. For individuals, that's going to be a big part of it. Because I think nationally we're trying to operate like we did decades ago,
right?
And you can't do that.
Sure,
you can't do that.
Well, yeah, and the last couple of years have highlighted that we can't continue to do things the same way, and it's like a natural posture that I think to fall into as employers are just whatever industry it is, you get so focused on making the customer happy or your patients happy, clients happy, that the employees, the people that are on the ground floor day in and day out, kind of get lost in translation.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. I mean, healthcare. And I don't want this to sound cruel, but it's not the hospitality industry. Mm-hmm. You want to be kind to your patients and take good care of them, but sometimes, like you said, the focus can get put on the wrong things. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Well, Tia, anything else you want to share before we close here, or in closing?
I'm just happy to be back home. Never thought we'd be here, but here we are. And I'll be coming up on 15 years in my job in August.
Wow.
So that's kind of wild. But I'm just happy to be here and be here at a time when there's just so much positive going on in our community.
Well, awesome. Yeah, and I commend you, Tia, for what you're doing for a busy professional to take time out of your regular schedule to contribite to the greater good. I think is a big part of all of our callings. We're making something better for the babies.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Oh, and shout out to my kids, Colt and Elizabeth. We have soon to be 5-year-old twins, and I forgot to mention them.
Oh, they'll be watching this back, and I'm pretty excited about that. All right, Tia, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
Portsmouth, Ohio.